from Ghana, and Nana answers on the call. She's a space lawyer. But really good to have her talk about how she can support what it is we're trying to do to get us started, and really have a focused futures dialogue to see where we go from here. So let me see if I can get her on stage and then get All Nations and then yourself representing the other leg.
Thank you very much, Dr. Claire. I think the point for discussion is about the future dialogue on partnership. I'm Dr. Kwabena Fuswamankwa from CK Tadem University of Technology and Applied Sciences, Navrongo, Ghana. Now,
before you start, I'm going to let Nana begin with a quick time overview of some of the policy and legal issues that we may have to be thinking through as well, because we've kind of left a lot of that out of the conversation because we haven't been able to find anybody doing space law. At least I tried. Turns out that she has an acquaintance, more than a passing acquaintance with space law. Nana Asante Korte actually sits on the space committee of the International Bar Association. I'm going to ask her a few questions about the space law part of it and how that that piece of it could support what she's trying to do through her volunteer work there in terms of bringing to bear capacity for space policy and space law. So welcome, Nana Korte. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And you?
Fine, thank you. So tell us a little more about what the Space Committee at the International Bar Association does.
All right. And so thank you very much for the opportunity. And it's been interesting listening to the conversations that have been going on. I am a lawyer by profession and a member of the International Bar Association. And I'm an officer of the Space Law Committee. So what we do is it's a convergence of lawyers who find themselves in the space, no pun intended. So in the industry relating to space activities, we engage in putting out communiques, putting out newsletters, sharing ideas from different jurisdictions on how to ensure that as we venture into space, which is, even though it's been around for about 60 years, the first journey to space was about in excess of 60 years ago. It's still an emerging area. It's an emerging technology. And there is the need for us as lawyers to also ensure that there's the right regulatory framework to ensure that as we engage in the space race, we do not also find ourselves at any disadvantaged or in any conundrum that would affect our futures. So that is what the IBA Committee on Space does in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you. So are there currently any law schools in Ghana that have a space law concentration?
Space law concentration, not yet. What we have is a few do courses in technology, and sometimes you have just a few topics on space, but not having to do with space. Technology is still emerging in our neck of the woods. I think it's an issue with Africa as it stands. And even with taking technology, law and technology, we just had universities introduce that. So space is still lumped up with technology when it comes to our educational system. And even with that, it's not that pronounced. Interest in space is not much. And when you go to the IBA, when you go to the International Bar Association, interaction with other lawyers from other countries also indicates that it's still a new area, that there are very few experts in that field.
Well, that's true. There are very few experts. But again, what I find, certainly in the US, is that experts create themselves as the technology emerges. So it's emerging, but somebody has to be emerging along with it. And if you wait until the law is defined, then we'll be again behind the curveball in being at the table when the law is being constructed. So part of what we want our academic space Ungana to do is to put on the table what is the roadmap. And here we have a potential project that we're talking about launching, working 6 or 8 universities. I mean, how many universities across Africa already have signed an MOU, right? To look at doing a joint project in launching CubeSats. This might be a perfect case study, if you will, for a law school or a couple law schools or a law school in each of these countries to be part of the process, to follow the project, to look at the MOU, look at the technology that will be used, and look at the business case, look at what is happening in terms of other constellations to see if it can be a teaching tool for the law schools to begin to even have it as a first case to test out if something is invented, for example, by one school, is it automatically licensed to the other school? I mean, there's so many elements of it. Is this something you think that the International Bar Association, a committee like yours, will be able to support as a case study development project for law students or international policy students in the universities that are part of this project? Not all of them have law schools anyway, so it may have to be in the business school or in the international relations school, but we need to find a way to begin this conversation. I'm very concerned that this piece has been left out.
Certainly so, certainly. So I was happy about the presentation from Xavier Space Solutions, and then I was actually drafting an email to him that we should have a meeting to discuss how we can fit law into this emergence of space and the emergence of the need for proper education in the space industry. And I think it's important. And I'm happy about the project you just mentioned, and I'm happy to volunteer my services as a lead and a liaison with the International Bar Association to ensure that, yes, the legal aspects of the space industry are also looked at. You asked the question, what are some of the issues that face legal issues? Go through that now.
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of legal issues that have not been defined, as you rightly say. I mean, the law is emerging, but some of it is contract law assigned to space. Some of this is financial insurance law assigned to space. But new law, the emerging law around who owns what if you mine the moon, that's all very new. That's not yet worked out. That's still part of the emerging space. I really was more concerned right now because today we're talking about the partnership question. What are we going to do? It's the last session of the 3 days. We want to talk about what are we going to do. So I'm delighted to hear that you're willing to serve as a focal point for us to come back to you after this and say, hey,
yes,
here's what MOUs look like. Here's what we're trying to build. Can you help us come up with some little, I don't know, vignettes or 10-minute sessions that we can give to the students in those schools that are studying law or pre-law or whatever, to begin to at least become aware of what it is that they are going to be looking at when they come out of school. And so it's not only an engineering project. The policy and the other pieces of the project should travel alongside the engineering. So I'm really excited that you're open to that. Any other insights you might have before I go back to the other gentlemen and get them in the conversation?
Yes, certainly. So with regards to, and when I was listening to the sessions, and I think someone mentioned it, that it's not, space is not only, does not only belong to the engineers. When it comes to space, there's so many factors we don't look at. So we're primarily focused on geos and non-geos and, you know, building satellites, but there's more to it. When it comes to space mining, that's a commercial aspect that the business schools must be looking at. How do I also position myself to become a space entrepreneur? These are all things that also need to be looked at. With the legal aspects, who owns what is found in certain parts of the outer space or outside the orbit of the Earth? These are all things that need to be looked to have a more collaborative approach to looking at space. And when it comes to the Ghanaian context or the African context, we are a bit behind. So we need to learn from each other. I also work with the regulator of the telecommunications industry in Ghana, even though I'm here in my personal capacity. But we just put in place a satellite licensing framework. And looking for examples around the globe, around the continent, it was a bit difficult. And we are pioneers in some of the licenses that were created. We've now licensed Starlink, and we've granted them various licenses to enable them work or function in Ghana. And these are all things that need legal, legal oversight or legal know-how as to how satellites function, how we function in space. Another issue is space debris. Now, some satellites are becoming obsolete and they are in space. It's causing a lot of waste in space. And we need to look at how we're going to also clear space or make way for other satellites. And so there's so many careers that can be formed based on just the space industry. It's valued over $630 billion per the McKinsey and Company and Co. report in 2023. And we as Africans need to start looking at how we're going to take part in this global space economy, not only as engineers, but as lawyers, business entrepreneurs, as geographists, and so many careers that can be built from this. So I think we need to look at it on a more holistic and with a broader lens to ensure that we situate ourselves and we're prepared for the careers that can evolve also from the space industry.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to look at the future we want and the partnerships. I'm going to ask, when we began 2 days ago, I asked a question about Imagine 2030, right? So is Ernest or Joseph in the room? Need to get one of them, please. I want you to jump to 2030, right? And think about, in your case, the African Sun Project, in your case, the Oaseas project, right? Which is the Africa Space Research Analog Simulation Project, which your university hopefully will be a part of, and you're going to be in African. You are both, but you focus on that, or maybe you all the both, whatever. But I want you to imagine 7 years from now, what would a successful outcome look like for you? Starting from where we are today, 7 years from now, if we were to have Space in Ghana 2030, is the year when we're supposed to have achieved the SDGs. I just want you to throw yourself into the future and tell me 1 or 2 specific things that you will be seeing that we have accomplished. I want to start with the end in mind, then we backtrack to what we need to do today.
Right. Thank you very much.
And Ernest, you need to join us up here. Yes, you need to join us up here. So we're looking at 2030. We know that the space for the SDGs is an important date, but it's a very short term in terms of space design, but still is long enough that you can, it's short enough to see, but long enough that you're not sure exactly how it's going to work out. So it's a good date. So we're asking each of you to look at 2030 We're now at Space Ungana 2030. What have we achieved? What exists, either from the AFCONSAT perspective or the Oasis project, which is the space analog model around Africa, because both of them are multinational projects. It's not one university. So they're complex system of systems problems that we have to work out. So what would we have achieved? One or two things. If you're standing in 2030, it's very important. I don't want you to answer me by saying, we will be. I want to say we have done or we are doing. So you have to stand in the present. In other words, you are in 2030, in the present of 2030. And it's a very important because from the point of view of futures thinking, when you're doing a futures exercise, the goal of a futures exercise is to help you to see the emerging future and to begin to navigate either away from the threats you fear or navigate towards the vision you want. So we're focusing on what we want. So first you have to declare what it is you want. And what it is you want, you would have already had it in 2030. It will be something you're going to do. If you say to me, in 2030, I am going to be doing, it means you haven't done it yet. So you must answer the question by saying, in 2030, we at CK tell them have done this, we have done that, we have done that. Right? Ready?
Right. Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, go ahead.
So by 2030,
In 2030,
yes, in 2030, CK Tadem would have established
has already established, that would have. We
Okay.
have established.
By 2030, CK Tadem
In
have established
2030, not back.
in
In
2030,
2030,
CK Tadem have established an internationally recognized simulation site where other nations can also come in and experience a simulation or a simulation event or for potential astronauts.
okay. In 2030, how many missions have you done?
I expect at least 2 internationally and locally about 10.
3 missions.
Yes.
So you would have done 3 missions, locally, meaning locally in just Ghana,
Yes.
and then 3 or 2 international.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna leave it there. Your turn. Hey, you have a mic in your hand. Turn on the mic.
Okay, I'm Dr. Mensah from AATI and also faculty member at ANP-HB.
And you need to say also on the program board of Oasis.
Yes, on the program board of Oasis by energy experts, right?
Mhm.
And a rover expert. All right, but I want to give a little background on AFCONSAT.
No, you don't need to do that. Just tell me what you
Okay.
have achieved. I don't
Okay.
want to know what
Well-
you have achieved. I don't want to know the background.
All right. Well, in 2030, we have a full constellation of maybe 10 countries.
Is it
We-
maybe?
No, we already have 7 countries.
Okay, so you
in-
have 7 countries.
We have 7 countries.
Mhm.
In 2030, we have an African constellation of satellites, for sure.
How many satellites?
We have at least 7, but we are expecting 3 more countries to join us.
Wait, so in 2030, you're expecting 2 more countries, or would you already have had 9 countries?
We have 7 countries in our
In
consortium.
2030.
No, in 2030, in 2020, we have 7 countries.
I'm asking in 2030. You are
2030,
in
we
2030.
have, in 2030, we have 7 countries. And in addition to that, we will have 3 more.
So you don't have them yet.
We don't have them
So
yet,
when
but
will you have the other 3 more?
we are expecting, once we have the project that we are going to conduct during all this time, 3 more countries will join us.
When? It's now
They will join.
2030.
Okay.
When are they going to join? By
Okay, they are going to
2040?
join.
By 2050? When are
Um,
they going to join?
They will join. They will join very soon because
When is very soon? What year
it-
is very soon?
they will join in 2 years from now.
When is that? 2032?
They will join. Yeah,
32.
no, they will join in 2026.
But if they have joined in 28 and you're in 2030, you already have 9 countries. So your logic is flawed.
No.
So in the world of manifestation, you're
Yes.
trying to manifest something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The foresight exercise is to, and it's a tool called backtracking.
Mhm,
You have to first state, what have you accomplished?
mhm.
What is the future you want? Are you at 9 or are you at 5? If you're at 9, then you can say, when we started in 2024, we had 7.
Okay.
We did 2 experiments in 2026,
Yes.
and then 1 country got excited and joined our 2 countries. And originally we thought we had 9 countries, but by 2028, 3 more countries joined. So now we have a dozen countries. So actually, that's how we got to 12 countries.
Okay.
Am I making sense?
Wow.
So there is an internal logic
Okay.
to the process,
Yeah.
which has to be real in order for you to put in place the project
Mhm.
steps
Yeah.
to get there.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we're starting with 7 countries.
So in 2030, how many do you have?
2030.
2030, you are in 2030. How many countries are in the AFCONSAT project?
10.
10. Fantastic. Now, what is your mission?
Our mission is
Our mission,
our missions. Yes, our missions.
is already existing. So what's the mission of the satellite? What are you getting from it? What data is it giving you?
Okay. It's an Earth observation specifically for measuring environmental parameters and doing smart farming. Okay. So that's our mission.
And who is buying the data from you? Whose problem are you solving?
The data will be disseminated by all the members to all the universities. So all the universities who are not part of our consortium will be end users of all the data that we will collect.
And what will that help them to accomplish?
Hmm?
What problem will the data solve?
Well, the data will help farmers to predict when they're going to go to farm or when they're going to get the product from the farm and know how to manage their farming.
Thank you. So, Ernest, I want you to build on that because you're also in AFCONSAT. What else happened on the way to 2030? Did you guys invent any new technology, any new software, any new apps, any new hardware? What else happened?
All right. In 2026, AFCONSAT 1 was successful, involving 7 countries. And in 2 years after, 2028, 2 other countries were added to AFCONSAT. And so we were now 9 countries. And we developed and launched the satellite in 2028, which provided data of green cover in these 8 different countries. And the data was given to the Ministry of Forestry, which should have a linkage with deforestation, which had a linkage with deforestation in these countries. And in 2030, that's 2 years after now, we have 2 more countries joining. And so we are 11 countries, and we are operating AFCONSAT 3, which is a constellation of satellites from 11 different countries, and is providing data of soil texture to the Ministry of Agriculture in 11 different countries, which which is fed to the farmers to advise them on precision farming.
Fantastic. Now, in terms of any technology innovation that is patentable, was anybody in the group able to come up with something that was patentable?
Yes, in 2026, for the software to analyze the data, the software was not commercial. It was developed by the team, and therefore we have a patent on it. In 2028, for the satellite, the communication model was developed by the team, and so there's a patent on it.
Right. Now you had an international team. How did you deal with some of the international rules around patents? Were you able to get support from the Space Committee of the International Bar Association? Because Ghana didn't have any space lawyers really. But you did know somebody, right?
Yes.
And she was able to bring what? Some support to that process.
Yes.
And so again, see how I'm building the connections. One of the things we have to learn to do when you're trying to create a collaborative research exercise is we have a vision. Each of you have an individual vision, right? But what has to happen in the next couple of weeks, couple of months to get to that vision is for this exercise to be properly structured, properly, let's say, moderated. Then once a decision is made, everybody agree that this is the way forward, then the project charter can now be done with, this is our objective, this is our mission, this is our vision, this is what we hope to accomplish, these are our metrics of success, so much money we need, all of that. But unless you have a very clear shared vision, which is tied to who is going to need this data, whose problem you're solving, getting the support, knowing the marketplace that right now, what our government's talking about. You have right now in play Decade of Oceans, so that's important for government. Climate is still important for government because 2050, so forest cover may be important for carbon credits or for carbon sink. That might be a number that might be important for the global space. So maybe that can do that. It's for you to see how does your project link to some of the, let's say, demand vectors, if you will, that society want that you're going to provide through your solution. And that is part of the exercise of looking at the program design process. So back to you, Kwabena. How was your project, even though it's a land-based project, but you're looking at things like energy and battery storage, etc. Were any of the things you devised for your analog mission able to plug back new knowledge into any of the satellite designs? Something around the battery, something around solar energy skin, solar energy flakes. What technology were you able to test in the field that was then able to be deployed on some of the satellites that were designed?
Now, our site is quite a hazy environment, which can mimic something like environment on the moon. So we chose materials within the environment which are able to withstand those high temperatures. For example, the use of mud houses and the use of caves that we adopted, and also solar panel system for provision of energy over the region, because you can get sunlight duration over the area is almost 12 hours. And adopting to solar panels, we're able to generate the needed energy we need over the period. Then also issue with water, which is quite challenging in the region. So we have to adopt the use of storage vessels within the cave. Then also managing waste, which is another issue in space exploration. That one was quite challenging, and we are still trying to see the way out of it in order to minimize any form of infestation through our waste management system. So this is what has been done so far.
Thank you. All right. Any comments or questions from anybody about the process? In the back. Joseph, any questions about the process? What we're trying to do is get to, yeah.
Thank you very much. I just want to say how difficult it is when you are not accustomed to languaging your future in the present. But what happens when you language it in the present, I am, we are, it gives it so much power. Yes? Because as my coach would say, you do not go to your vision, you come from it. So it's as if you're living it already. And I recognized how difficult it was for them, because if they're in the future, they are still speaking about going to the future. So we will. And so it is something that you need to practice. So Ernest, you were able to language it so well. And if you continue, all of you continue to be present in 2030, be present in 2040, and looking around you and seeing what it is, it has become, then it is so empowering. What Dr. Nelson and I tend to do is that, because you want to give the background and all to it, we say it all happened when. And so you're able now to give that background and satisfy that part of you that want to give context to it. But brilliant job. And I would suggest that you continue with this futures exercise. Dr. Nelson is amazing at helping you to develop scenarios. And from those scenarios, you can create a preferred scenario. Great job.
Right. So I want to come out, and Joseph, if you want to say anything while Joseph comes forward, come forward, Joseph, come forward. You are part of the SSLT lab here at ANU. One of the things we talked about is that Ghana needs to have a collective space society of some kind. It's very hard for the Ghana Space SSTI to be tracking down individual people. There's no kind of central place. They know about you, they know about you, they know about you, but it's like we're not organized to be effective. I think that coming out of this, there needs to be a conversation. I think there were 4 schools that were on consistently. Cape Coast was on, Patrick was on consistently. You were here, and I think academics came and NUST. That's 5 schools. That's a great start. I think either one of you has to take the bullet and say, listen, I will serve as the coordinator to get the first conversation going about how we move forward, right? Somebody has to call the meeting. So it has to be one of you two, because you two are here and you two have been there from the beginning, right? Why? Because you heard when the director spoke on Monday. He was very clear about the fact that the policy leaves room for private sector. It leaves room for civil society, but you have to be organized to benefit. You cannot expect the government to do it with the limited staff and money that they have. And by organizing, others will begin to see that there's a space ecosystem in Ghana with which they may begin to interlock, whether it's from the K through 12 education, whether it's for business opportunities to partner to do research, because it could be that the export laws might be changed in the US that allows you to now offer your lab as a service to US companies who want to do it at a less cost than they have to do it right now in the US, because those export laws are going to be changed or modified in some form or fashion, right? So again, there's ideas as to why it's important. On Monday, you heard from National Space Society that they do have international chapters. I have to say that it's been hard to get to the person in charge of that, but I know Carlton, who is now the CEO as well. So he's not only chairman of the board of governors, he's also CEO of the management structure. So I can easily call and say, we're ready for that call. I need to pick up the phone and make sure the person responds. Because maybe when I send an email, they're like, Africa, the Caribbean, why do they want to? They have no space in those places. Probably that's why he ignores me, right? Who knows? I know they have labs in India and those other spacefaring countries. So, but I think it's best if you join when you're already a legal society here, so that you are your own entity, and then you're an entity of them. So you're not coming under their jurisdiction, if that makes sense to you. You have your own jurisdiction within the Ghanaian society with which you work out things based on Ghanaian law. Same thing might have to happen in Cote d'Ivoire. You go back and start to push for that. So we begin to have this body of practice. Joseph, floor is yours.
Okay, so they've all been able to conceptualize what 2030 will be like in terms of the projects. And so the only aspects I would have added to it, to what they have said, will be the funding aspect, because, you know, space is capital intensive. And so, and one of the things we've been talking about over the period was how to generate funds to sustain our space activities. So I would have added that in 2030, we are able to generate funds from our satellite projects to support various projects we may bring on board ahead. So that's what I would have added to it.
Excellent. The financing question. How are you going to sustain yourself? Will grants be available in the next 6 years? We have grants now, but they may not exist in 3 years. All of Europe is changing. The politics are changing. The parties are changing. Everybody's looking inwards. Nationalist tendencies are happening. So how are you going to get gold mining companies and oil exploration companies to put money into research in your countries? Nana, would you like to add anything to 2030? I see your hand up.
Yes. So
Yes.
in 2030, what I would like to see is, of course, a robust legal system governing the space industry. But dialing down the content of this is the fact that we're using local materials as a source of production for our satellite parts or anything that is related, any satellite infrastructure. We're using local materials because that drives down costs and it helps with ensuring that our projects are sustainable. And also with the mention of development of apps, the Ghana Intellectual Property Office is always available to assist when you have a new app design that you need to patent. So this is just information to all the participants that you can just walk into the Ghana Intellectual Property Office to assist you when you have an original invention and you seek to patent it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to go back to the question.
Here.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yes. Yeah, I want to go back to the question that Joseph asked. One of the reasons that we haven't been successful with the outcome side is the funding. Okay, because we wanted to build a constellation with CubeSat, and it was difficult for universities to get the funding.
But let me just say, it is difficult also because when I ask certain questions, those questions could not be answered. I didn't hear I didn't hear from you when I asked you, what is the payload? What is the mission? They were not clear. So how can they raise money if they don't have clear directive of what they're raising?
Yeah.
So it wasn't that there's necessarily no financing. It was that they were not prepared to even go after the financing or see financing as one of the objectives that are part of the roadmap. So that's what has to be different about this time around.
Okay. So one of the things that we are thinking about is instead of launching a CubeSat, is to move to Pocket Cube. If it's possible to have a constellation of Pocket Cube, yeah, we will have achieved our goal. We know that the Pocket Cube can be is accessible to universities cost-wise. So university can afford CubeSat without going to the government and or looking for money for building the constellation. Like a guy on the presentation, he said that doing a poker cube is like doing satellites, same software and everything. So doing a poker cube, we get the same experience, the same knowledge. So
Some of it may not be the same, but at least you get to test your first prototype
yes, yes,
as a lesser cost.
yes.
So any mistakes cost you less money.
Yeah. Well,
So you work out your king. So that's what. So we'd call it a prototype. So you would have a 3 level. You'll have the simulation, a digital twin,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And Ernest and them are gonna work on that project. They're gonna start learning how to build the digital twin,
yes.
right? Because somebody in the team needs to know
Yes,
how
sir.
to do that.
Mm.
While the digital twin is being designed and built, and they're teaching themselves that skill, you are designing the prototype, which is a pocket cube, to actually launch physically, because you can't assume you're going to get free launch services.
Yes.
You might get them discounted, but it might still cost the university something, and that might be even more expensive than the cube itself. So there's that. Then you have it up for a year, and you're doing your testing, you're doing your of the cybersecurity and all the things that you have to test to see if they work. You're learning from that to now iterate and build, as he said, in 2028, right? Your AFCONSAT 2, which is now your higher level, more well-defined cameras, more all of this stuff that if it breaks, it will really be painful. Will be in AFCONSAT 2.
Yeah.
But AFCONSAT 1 will just be a proof of concept, really, because you're not going to have the same high definition cameras that can see the file with granularity of data you're looking for. We're really talking about forest cover or water or whatever. But you need to pick a payload that you have in common that makes the constellation valuable. Otherwise, why are you doing it together? You could as well do it separately.
We can do IoT. That's possible. But we'll talk about that.
Yeah, but again, come back to what is the business case? In other words, what is a common problem that all Africa has that is best done in a continental way? Because you have countries on the East Coast, countries on the West Coast. It's a huge continent. We were looking at the map yesterday and we saw China, India, half of America, all fit into Africa. We were looking at the map yesterday. So we have to, first of all, strip ourselves of this narrative that Africa is the same size as South America. It's not. It looks that way on the map, but it's not. So it's a huge continent to cover. And as I said to you, you're all not listening to me, but I'm a futurist. Look at the water question. This is not a joke. All right.
All right. So
go ahead.
Great. Not directly connected to this, but then you are encouraging about the Ghana Space Society, so that we have unified effort and we'll be more organized so that we can play with international partners. Now, do you foresee a conflict of jurisdiction between the Ghana Space Society and the Ghana Space Science Technology Institute?
No.
Because they are regulating.
Their government.
They are governments.
They set policy. You're not a government organization. You are a civil society professional association of advocates, professionals, enthusiasts. It gives room for student clubs. It gives room for people who don't belong anywhere. They just love space. They spend hours of their spare time building stuff in their backyard, and they really wish they could belong somewhere. It builds room for the astronomy people to talk to the satellite people, to bitch and complain that you're building satellites that are going to mess up their ability to see space. It leaves room for the GIS people. So they will still exist in their individual capacity, but it gives you a place where you all can come together maybe once a year to do something that is a collective endeavor. The satellite guys might still have their satellite working group or satellite association, or you might have the, GIS. Everybody might still exist, but you need a place. So it could either be an alliance, it could be a network. You can decide what the legal structure is, but the country is big enough to have separate entities, but still do one or two things together across the boundaries of sector and state and universities and all the other things that divide you. Yeah, I see Nana has her hand up.
Yes, so to add to what Doc has said, we have the Ghana Chamber of Telecoms, for instance, and all our major telcos are part of it. All our major infrastructure companies such as ATC, Helios, they do the masts, the towers, the tower infrastructure companies are all part of the Chamber of Telecommunications. And what it does is that it gives them a voice. It gives them a greater voice when they are advocating for each other. So they still function as different entities, but they come together to ensure that things that are mutually beneficial to them, anything that is mutually beneficial, they come together as one voice to advocate for it. And coming from the regulator, it really helps when you're more organized and you are together. It helps in lending a listening ear to your requests.
Right. So you have 33 million up to 35 million people in Ghana. It says 33, but I'm going to add an extra million because I'm sure the government is not counting people that well. So you have 35 million people in Ghana. There's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't have at least one umbrella organization. It doesn't have to be an organization of organizations. I think those are very hard to do. I would make it an organization of individuals. So when they're in the room, they're not sort of representing, unless they have been told by their association, they could represent association. They're joining of their own accord because they see the value in cross-functional hybridization. Such an institution would be much more able to go to Ghana Space Society and say, hey, we want to have a national expo, and the astronomers are going to do this, the satellite people are going to do this, the telecom people are going to do X, Y, Z, the academicians will do. There's so much you could do. And you can say, we want to have the first one in 2026, for example. It's possible. Or maybe it can be next year. Who knows? I don't know. It really depends on how much you drive. And you always don't have to think that everything has to be done to what I call, American standards that first year out. I don't believe in that. Me, I start with what I can do, right? And I have no fear of people say, oh, this was only 25 people came. Yes, but it's 25 people who actually wanted to be there. And the goal for me is not numbers, it's about what happens after the conference. So this is why I'm spending so much time on this conversation. It's not the conference, it's what happens as a result of us coming together and sitting and getting this 3-day lesson in everything from space policy to satellite policy to space debris. I mean, we have covered everything to do with space, right? We've looked at space ethics, space law, so if Nana says to me, hey, we want to do a space course, I can say, okay, Michelle, I found somebody in Ghana who wants to work with you guys and get that started. So we have a lot of rich content that we now have to make into projects for Cote d'Ivoire, for Senegal. Dr. Sarr was here. He wants to do stuff in Senegal. He's on the Space Council, but he has connections to schools in Senegal. So we had three countries here that are really on the west coast of Africa that could do a lot together. So let's not discount what happened in these last 3 days. Yes, I see your hand up again. Go ahead.
Thank you, Doc. And with regards to individuals, I'm a member of the board of the Institute of ICT Professionals. And now our membership is in excess of about 500. And as you're saying, Doc, it just takes one person to start. There are so many individuals doing so many amazing things in the space industry. They just need somewhere to converge. They need a network that will help them propel their businesses. So you can use the Institute of ICT Professionals as an example and as the base for forming the institute, the space industry experts network, or whichever name that you would like to go by.
I'm very excited. Jemima, who was here, he's on CESGAC. She came on Saturday to our International Moon Day. She has agreed to be the Moon Village Association, one of the focal points. I think each country is allowed 2. At least I have my first one, so I'm ecstatic about that. There is the Space Matters Impact Coalition. I would like to have at least one Guinean organization be a member of that network. It's a global network. There are many things that are happening, and we all can't be everywhere. So it's really good if one person takes on that, you take on whatever your professional hat is in the outside world, you come back to Ghana with that information. So you will have, each of you probably should be in 2 or 3 organizations internationally and domestically. So you're cross-fertilizing your information, your ability to be, because space is both deep and wide, right? And those of you who are not going to be, like, I am not an inventor, right? So I'm going to be the wide person. I'm going to know everybody or much of people in the system, because my natural tendency is to be a synthesizer, a system thinker. I put together people from all over the place and it makes a whole. Some of you are the inventor type. You're going to go deep in your sector, but you need to be deep in the sector, not only here in Ghana, but internationally, to bring back content to what you're trying to do and know the other people in your sector in Ghana and form a, let's say, research network so you can collaborate to make the money together to do the research faster. So those are some pointers I think I have. I'm ready to wrap up. I see no more questions or hands. Dr. Pierre, you have any comments?
I wanted to say something
go ahead.
about getting investors into space studies. Now, we have mining companies here, and their activities are having a lot of impact on both air quality and our water bodies. Now, if researchers undertake field work in these areas and they get to know their negative impact on the environment and ways to mitigate them, because most of these institutions also have environmental departments which are prepared to mitigate challenges associated with their activities. They'll be prepared to support, and especially have a situation whereby we have launched a geostationary satellite which focuses on the activities pertaining to just Africa. Then they'll be prepared to, because it minimizes the amount of money also used to do area-specific studies, because just the satellite alone can cover a vast area of their field of activities, and as such, instead of them paying for ground observations, the satellite, if it's so vertically, it has a very high vertical resolution, then it's able to do all those field measurements for them. In that way, if, let's say, one of our satellites can provide this data, they'll be prepared to, invest in that, because it's reduced the overhead costs and other things. Thank you.
I do agree. And one of the things that came up was that one of the outcomes of this has to be an asset map that needs to be prepared by this network that you guys are going to form. So we now know, okay, what are we going to go to the international market for? What can we ask Professor Pierre to call on? I'm throwing you in the fire here. So maybe calling his old colleagues at the World Bank. I know he left a long time ago, but you never can tell. The fact that he worked there gives him an entree, right? So what can he call an African Development Bank to start this conversation? So by the time you're ready, their ears have been softened, right, to hear the story. So everybody has a role to play in advancing the agenda. What is important is that we leave here today agreeing that when we come tomorrow to the project charter, you now have some beginnings of what it is you're going to go to. I would suggest you go home and write what I call your personal mission statement. So in 2030, here's what I personally want to know that I have helped to make happen, separate from the organizational mission statement. At the end of the day, you can only do what you can do, right? So I always like to have, what can I do? If nobody supports me, what can I still do to move the agenda and ball forward? So I want to thank everybody for being here. Thanks for we've had a long day. And for those of you who may want to join tomorrow, which is going to be very different, it's not a panel, it's actually a workshop type thing to discuss AfghanSat and Oaseas and learn how to write project charters. We probably will be able to use the same link. I mean, we add another day to it to make it easy for everybody. And then we move forward. All right. So thank you all. Looking forward. Yes.
It's going to be in this auditorium and starting at 9.
This room?
I think it's too early. 10. Well, that's okay. 10 is okay.
Start at 10 o'clock? Okay.
Yes.
10
Okay.
o'clock tomorrow.
I'm going to inform my students to be here at 10.
Right. Okay. That gives them time to show up on time. All right. But tell them 9:30 because students are always late. Thank you, Nana. Thank you,
Thank
Professor
you.
Pierre. Thank you, Dr. Mensah. Thank you, Ernest. Thank you, Dr. Kwabena. Thank you, Emmanuel and the tech team. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Charmaine Absentia. We really could not do without each of us. And thank you to Dr. all the other people who have supported us to this point. It's been a rich 3 days. All the moderators, all the speakers, all the panelists, all the background people who supported. We are very grateful for your support. With that, as we say, ashe, ashe, ashe.